Why some people love risk in business. Level C1 Advance. The thrill behind the uncertain. When you think about business, what comes to mind first? Many people imagine stability, careful planning, and precise strategies that guarantee success. But for a surprising number of entrepreneurs, stability is the least exciting part. What truly attracts them, what keeps them awake at night with ideas burning in their minds, is risk. Risk, by definition, means uncertainty. It means not knowing whether your idea will take off or fail miserably. Yet, for many, that uncertainty is not something to avoid. It's something to chase. Risk gives business life its pulse, its energy, and its sense of purpose. Without it, innovation would stop, creativity would fade, and progress would lose its spark. But why do some people seem to enjoy walking on the edge, while others prefer the safety of solid ground? Why are some entrepreneurs drawn to situations that most people would find terrifying? Uncertain investments, unpredictable markets, and unstable conditions. The answer lies deep in the psychology of risk-taking, a complex mix of biology, personality, experience, and environment. The biology of boldness. At the most basic level, our attraction to risk begins in the brain. Scientists have found that risk-taking triggers a powerful chemical reaction. When we face uncertainty, our brains release dopamine, the same neurotransmitter responsible for feelings of pleasure and reward. For some people, this dopamine response is stronger. It makes risky behavior feel not only exciting, but deeply satisfying. These people experience a rush, similar to what athletes or gamblers feel during moments of high tension. In business, that rush often comes from taking a leap of faith, investing in a bold idea, launching a product before competitors, or making a high-stakes decision without full information. Researchers even suggest that certain people might have genetic differences that make them more prone to seek novelty and excitement. This trait, known as sensation-seeking, pushes individuals to explore the unknown, to take chances, and to find stimulation in uncertainty. In other words, risk is not just a choice for some, it's a biological drive, the entrepreneurial mindset. Yet biology alone doesn't explain why some of the most successful business leaders actively seek out risk. People like Elon Musk, Richard Branson, or Steve Jobs weren't simply driven by a chemical reward. They had a mindset built around calculated risk. Successful entrepreneurs rarely see risk as a blind jump. Instead, they view it as an educated gamble, one where the potential gain outweighs the possible loss. They don't ignore danger. They study it, analyze it, and prepare for it. The difference between a reckless gambler and a visionary entrepreneur often lies in preparation and perspective. This mindset can be summed up in a simple but powerful phrase: no risk, no reward, but smart risk, smart reward. Entrepreneurs learn to embrace uncertainty as opportunity. While others see chaos, they see possibilities. While most people feel fear, they feel curiosity. And this curiosity often leads them to innovation, because every breakthrough, from the electric car to digital banking, began as a risky idea that others doubted. Fear and the comfort zone. So, what separates those who love risk from those who avoid it? One of the main factors is how individuals respond to fear. Fear is a natural part of human psychology. It protects us from danger. But in business, fear can also become a prison. The fear of losing money, reputation, or status keeps many people from taking the first step. Risk lovers, however, reinterpret fear. To them, fear isn't a stop sign, it's a signal that something meaningful is at stake. Psychologists call this reframing, changing the way we perceive a challenge. Instead of seeing risk as a threat, they see it as a test of skill, intelligence, and resilience. This ability to reinterpret fear doesn't make them fearless. It makes them courageous. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act despite it. And in business, that quality can be the difference between staying small and achieving greatness. The role of early experiences. Many entrepreneurs who embrace risk share another thing in common: early exposure to uncertainty. People who grow up in unpredictable environments, changing schools often, facing financial struggles, or experiencing cultural transitions sometimes develop a stronger tolerance for ambiguity. They learn early on that life can change suddenly, and the best way to survive is to adapt quickly. Over time, this adaptability becomes a kind of superpower. When they later enter the business world, they are less paralyzed by uncertainty than those who always lived in safe, predictable conditions. This doesn't mean that difficult childhoods automatically produce risk takers, of course. But research shows that a moderate amount of early challenge or instability can make people more resilient, more comfortable, taking calculated risks later in life. The social factor. Risk doesn't happen in a vacuum. Our environment, especially our culture, plays a major role in how we view and accept uncertainty. In societies that celebrate entrepreneurship, risk-taking is often seen as heroic. People admire bold innovators who challenge the status quo. In these cultures, failure is not shameful but part of the journey. The United States, for instance, has built an entire mythology around the self-made entrepreneur, someone who dares to fail big in order to win bigger. In contrast, more conservative or collectivist cultures may discourage risky behavior, valuing security and harmony over individual achievement. In such environments, failure can carry lasting social consequences, making people more cautious by design. This cultural contrast explains why startup ecosystems thrive in some countries while struggling in others. A society that encourages experimentation naturally produces more people who love taking risks, not because they're braver or smarter, but because their environment rewards it. The risk-reward paradox. One of the most fascinating aspects of risk in business is its paradoxical nature. The more you avoid risk, the safer you feel, but the fewer opportunities you encounter. The more you embrace risk, the more you expose yourself to possible loss, but also to greater reward. This paradox shapes the psychology of entrepreneurs. They understand that risk and reward are two sides of the same coin. Every major business decision involves a balance between caution and courage. The key is not to eliminate risk that's impossible, but to manage it wisely. Great entrepreneurs learn to calculate their chances, diversify their efforts, and plan for the unexpected. For them, risk is not an obstacle, it's a tool for growth. As venture capitalist Peter Thiel once said, "Brilliant thinking is rare, but courage is in even shorter supply than genius." And that's what separates dreamers from doers: the willingness to act when the outcome is uncertain. Calculated chaos. The art of managing risk. If risk is the heartbeat of entrepreneurship, then management is the rhythm that keeps it under control. The best risk takers are not gamblers, they are strategists. They know when to take a leap and when to wait. People often imagine that successful entrepreneurs are fearless and impulsive, but in reality, most of them are masters of calculated chaos. They thrive in uncertainty, not because they ignore it, but because they learn how to shape it. They understand that risk is not a wild storm to fight against, it's a wind that, if used correctly, can push the ship forward. The science of decision-making under pressure. When facing uncertain situations, our brains naturally try to predict outcomes. But under pressure, logic doesn't always win. Emotion often takes over. Entrepreneurs must learn to make quick decisions while balancing both sides of their minds, the analytical and the emotional. This is where risk intelligence comes into play, a term used to describe the ability to judge when risks are worth taking. Risk intelligence is not about being overly confident. It's about understanding probabilities, consequences, and timing. For example, when Jeff Bezos founded Amazon, He understood that the internet was new and unpredictable. He also knew that e-commerce could become huge. The risk was real, but the potential reward was even greater. His decision wasn't reckless. It was calculated boldness. People who love risk are often not adrenaline junkies, they're pattern seekers. They look for signals others ignore, sense shifts in markets, and act before the crowd realizes what's happening. When risk feels like a game. For some entrepreneurs, risk becomes a kind of game, a strategic one. They enjoy the process of planning, adjusting, and testing hypotheses. Business psychologist Dr. Michael Makobi once called this the gamesman mentality. Gamesmen, or game players, see business as a series of challenges that test their intelligence and adaptability. Winning brings satisfaction, but the real joy lies in playing the game itself. This mindset helps explain why some people can lose millions and come back stronger. They don't view failure as personal defeat. They see it as feedback. In fact, many risk-loving entrepreneurs develop a positive relationship with failure. Each mistake becomes a data point, each setback an opportunity to learn faster. To them, the biggest risk of all is standing still. The role of optimism and illusion. There's also a darker, or at least more complex side to this love of risk. Optimism. Bias. Humans are naturally optimistic, but entrepreneurs take this to another level. They often believe they can beat the odds, even when statistics say otherwise. This belief fuels persistence, but it can also lead to overconfidence. Optimism is a double-edged sword. On one hand, it motivates risk-takers to try again after failure. On the other, it can blind them to real dangers. Some psychologists argue that a controlled illusion is necessary for success. Believing too much in logic can stop innovation. Believing too much in luck can destroy it. The most successful entrepreneurs balance the two, using optimism as fuel but logic as steering. The illusion of control. Closely connected to optimism is what psychologists call the illusion of control, the belief that one can influence outcomes more than they actually can. Entrepreneurs often feel they can force success through sheer effort or willpower. This belief can be dangerous, but it can also be empowering. If you believe your actions truly matter, you are more likely to keep pushing, even when others give up. This illusion has a paradoxical benefit. It encourages persistence. In high-risk environments, persistence often matters more than accuracy. A person who keeps trying, adjusting, improving, learning, has a far greater chance of eventual success than someone who quits early because the odds look bad. So while illusion can lead to mistakes, it can also lead to extraordinary breakthroughs. Luck, timing, and the uncontrollable. Every entrepreneur who loves risk eventually learns a humbling truth. You can control your choices, but not the world. Markets crash. Pandemics happen. Trends shift overnight. The greatest plans can fail due to factors no one could predict. Yet, this randomness doesn't scare true risk-takers. It fascinates them. They treat luck and timing as parts of the game. They know they can't control every variable, but they can prepare to adapt quickly when reality changes. It's not luck they chase, but optionality, the ability to turn unexpected events into opportunities. This mindset is central to what economist Nassim Taleb calls anti-fragility, the idea that some systems and some people actually get stronger from stress and disorder. For many entrepreneurs, risk is a way to expose themselves to luck, to be in the right place when the unpredictable happens. Stress, resilience, and flow. Of course, loving risk doesn't mean ignoring stress. High-stakes environments are exhausting. Decision fatigue, financial uncertainty, and constant competition can easily lead to burnout. The secret weapon of successful risk-takers is resilience, the psychological ability to recover quickly from setbacks. Resilient people don't avoid stress. They transform it into focus. Some even experience what psychologists call a flow state. a mental zone of total concentration and enjoyment, often described by athletes and artists. Entrepreneurs in flow feel fully alive during the chaos of decision-making. Every challenge becomes part of the rhythm. This flow often comes when the level of challenge perfectly matches one's skill. Too little challenge causes boredom, too much causes anxiety. But when challenge and ability align, the result is deep satisfaction. That's why many business risk lovers report feeling more alive during uncertain times, because that's when they enter their flow. Risk as identity. For many entrepreneurs, risk-taking becomes more than a strategy. It becomes part of their identity. They define themselves as people who create opportunities, not just take them. Risk becomes proof of courage, creativity, and independence. It's a way of saying, I trust myself. This identity can be empowering, but it can also be dangerous if it turns into addiction. Some risk takers begin to chase the feeling of danger itself, even when logic says stop. Business success stories often hide long periods of anxiety, doubt, and even self-destruction behind the scenes. Healthy risk takers learn to balance ambition with self-awareness. They know that not every bet should be placed, and not every battle must be fought, turning failure into fuel. Failure is an inevitable part of taking risks, especially in business. But the difference between those who love risk and those who fear it often lies in how they interpret failure. To most people, failure feels like proof of inadequacy. But to risk takers, failure is feedback. It's data that sharpens future judgment. Every mistake becomes a lesson. Every setback, a new angle of insight. Many great innovators view failure as an essential stage of success. Thomas Edison famously said, I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work. Modern entrepreneurs echo that same resilience. When a product flops or an investment goes wrong, they analyze, adjust, and move on, often stronger than before. This mindset is called a growth mindset. The belief that intelligence and ability can be developed through effort and learning. It transforms risk from something dangerous into something developmental. In fact, studies show that people who view failure as feedback are more likely to take future risks and more likely to succeed in the long term. They don't aim for perfection. They aim for progress. The balance between courage and caution. While risk takers are often celebrated, not all risks are worth taking. The best entrepreneurs and investors develop a kind of strategic intuition, the ability to sense when a bold move is promising and when it's purely impulsive. They balance courage, the drive to act, with caution, the discipline to evaluate. This balance is what separates sustainable success from chaos. For example, venture capitalists rarely invest based on passion alone. They analyze market data, test assumptions, and plan multiple exit strategies. But they also know when to trust their gut, especially when the data doesn't yet exist for a new idea. In this way, risk-loving people are both analytical and instinctive. They understand that emotion and logic are not enemies, but partners in decision-making. The role of intuition in business risk. Intuition, often described as a gut feeling, is not magic. It's a form of rapid pattern recognition. When someone has deep experience in a field, their brain processes complex information unconsciously and delivers a feeling, yes, this will work, or no, this feels wrong. Seasoned entrepreneurs rely on this intuition when facing uncertainty. It allows them to make fast, confident decisions in environments where waiting for perfect data would mean missing the opportunity. However, true intuition grows only from experience. It's the reward for years of observation, failure, and reflection. That's why the most successful risk takers aren't necessarily the youngest or the boldest. They're the ones who have learned how to listen to their intuition without being controlled by it. Risk, creativity, and innovation. There's also a strong link between risk-taking and creativity. Innovation, by definition, requires trying something new, and that always involves uncertainty. Without risk, there can be no genuine innovation. In business, creative thinkers often take risks that others avoid, launching untested products, reimagining outdated systems, or exploring entirely new markets. These are not random gambles, they are acts of imagination backed by courage. The modern economy rewards those who can imagine the future before it arrives. And those are almost always people willing to risk being wrong today to be right tomorrow. Emotional intelligence and risk management. Interestingly, people who handle risk well tend to have high emotional intelligence (EQ). They can regulate anxiety, stay calm under pressure, and read the emotions of others, which helps in negotiations, leadership, and crisis situations. Emotional intelligence also protects risk-takers from the darker side of ambition, arrogance, impulsiveness, and burnout. Knowing when to pause, delegate, or seek advice is as important as daring to act. High EQ leaders don't just chase adrenaline. They understand people, and that human insight allows them to take smarter, more sustainable risks, the kind that builds trust and long-term success. When risk becomes a lifestyle, for some, risk becomes more than a business tool. It becomes a way of life. These individuals thrive in environments of uncertainty and challenge. They enjoy building, breaking, and rebuilding systems. However, this can become addictive. The constant search for the next big risk may lead to exhaustion or recklessness. Successful risk-takers learn to recognize when their drive crosses into obsession. They set boundaries, find balance, and maintain a sense of purpose. Risk, in its healthiest form, is not about chaos, it's about growth. It's about pushing beyond comfort zones to explore what's possible, not just for oneself, but for society as a whole. The future of risk in business. The 21st century is reshaping what it means to take risks. With rapid technological change, global uncertainty, and artificial intelligence transforming industries, risk-taking has become both more necessary and more complex. Future entrepreneurs will need a new kind of courage, one based not on blind boldness, but on adaptability, empathy, and vision. The most successful will be those who combine curiosity with responsibility. We are entering an era where the biggest risks might not be financial but ethical. How do we balance innovation with privacy, automation with humanity, and progress with sustainability? The leaders who dare to face these questions and take thoughtful risks will define the next chapter of business history. Conclusion. Why risk lovers matter. So why do some people love risk in business? Because they see the world not as fixed, but as fluid. They view uncertainty as a challenge, not a threat. These individuals drive innovation, reshape industries, and inspire others to think differently. They remind us that progress depends on those willing to say, "What if?" But their secret isn't fearlessness. It's resilience, reflection, and the ability to learn faster than they fail. In the end, risk isn't just about business. It's about the human spirit's need to explore, evolve, and expand beyond what is known. Risk is not the opposite of safety. It's the path to discovery.